Erika, thanks for being here again.
Hello.
So you have your dream job now, which is awesome. But I just want to talk a little bit about how you got there. You spent a decade in higher education. You became a mom and a wife. And at the same time, you went back and got your master's. At the same time, you were working full time. Then you decided to make a career switch that to something that was a little more aligned with your passion. Looking back on that now, it sounds so like when you look back on stuff and you can finally connect the dots, it seems so easy and so obvious. But I'm assuming at the time it was a little more confusing and a little more overwhelming. Can you tell me what happened during that time?
Sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, it's funny now that you're talking about, I'm realizing that we're talking about my 30s, right? The 30s,
Wow.
which for me has been this, a time of change, figuring out family, career stuff, getting a master's degree. So when I think about my 30s, I think my early 30s, I had way more energy, right? Like working full time, having a baby, and getting your master's degree sounds terrible right now. And like, I would never have the energy to do that right now. But absolutely, having that, having a lot of support from my partner, family, friends, being in a job in higher ed, I was very comfortable and could also, have a child, get a master's degree. So definitely timing, of course, is always huge, and having the support around you is huge. But yeah, so I, was sort of climbing the ladder, as they say, in higher ed. Started off as a program assistant and then slowly worked my way up, assistant director, associate director, did some teaching as well. And my master's degree is in education, focusing on adult learners. So definitely this progression. But the whole time feeling like, and just to back up too, even making that decision to have a child and get my master's degree, I remember going through this process of telling people, well, I don't want to be stuck. I feel stuck. I don't want to be stuck. And realizing that that's something you tell yourself, and that's actually not a real thing. But a lot
I
of
love what you say about that. Yeah, I love that.
It's not real. Yeah.
And what does it come from?
Well, and I don't have evidence of this, but I feel like it's something that women do a lot, that it's like this worrying about, well, if I do this, I won't have enough time for my family. If I do this, I won't have enough time for my child. If I do this, maybe I'm giving up my place. I finally, got to, this place of success. And so I don't want to give up my spot because somebody else is going to swoop in and take it. So I think it's a lot of this, feeling like, oh, I worked so hard, I don't want to lose. And, but I'm not convinced that men do that so much. I don't know. Maybe they do.
That's kind of fascinating. That's fascinating.
But I just feel like I hear that from women a lot, well, I just can't make a change, because, I'll give up my spot, or I won't have enough time for my child or my partner. And it's like, well.
And is that what went through your head at the time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I even remember a friend saying, like, you're not stuck and you're not giving up anything, like a change means you're going to lose something, but you're going to gain something. There's always something you lose and gain, but you're not actually ever literally stuck anywhere.
So then what made you, if you were going through all that, what made you finally pull the trigger and overcome that mindset?
Well, I think, I think people, when you get advice, and kind of someone to just say, like, to help you realize that all of that stuff is in your head and it's not actually true. And then to help you give that little push of like, at some point, just do it. You've been talking about this, you've been talking about it, like, what's the action plan now?
And did you find that you actually had to make that adjustment in your mindset before you move forward, or did you?
Yeah, I had to make that shift. I had to make that shift. I think I had to hear it a couple of times that you're not stuck. There's always room to change. You have tons of support around you. And then making that shift that, okay, I'm not stuck and I'm not losing my place. You know, I'm moving forward. So,
and so throughout that whole process, did you ever go back to that mindset? Like, what am I doing? I don't, you know, this is so overwhelming, or
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So more recent, I think the first, you know, the first big shifts went really well. And once I made those decisions, done, moving forward. But I think the more recent career shift, absolutely. It was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, oh, am I really going to do this? Am I really going to, you know, give up my career in higher ed? So I think, so one story that I was thinking about was, so I was all along in my career in higher ed, I was getting more and more interested in sustainability education, community gardens, community farming, like that just kept coming up for me. And, you know, always, you know, for years and years and years, feeling like I want to work for Denver Urban Gardens. I know that I want to work for Denver Urban Gardens. How can I make this happen? How can I bridge, you know, my career in higher ed with working for Denver Urban Gardens? But I was scared to actually make that leap. And so I was gaining some traction on getting into the field, the community garden, community farming field. And I still couldn't let go though of higher ed and this idea that like, well, I am really good at advising college students. I am really, you know, I know the system really well. It's a very comfortable.
Is that what your master's was on? Was specific? Your master's was on the higher ed piece?
It was, well, specifically adult education, which is actually really transferable to a lot of different fields, including sustainability education or environmental education. But I focused on higher ed because that's where I was at the time.
So when you made the decision to get your master's, you were still thinking you were going to be in higher ed? Yeah. Where you were. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So anyways, kind of, the past couple of years, you know, knowing that I wanted to work for Denver Urban Gardens. But I was still not sure if I should leave higher ed. And I went on an interview in the higher ed field. I went to a college and I went on this interview to be an academic advisor. You know, all the time thinking like, what are you doing? This isn't what you want to do. But it feels safe and good. So when I got to the college I was going to interview at, I was walking to the interview and there was a community garden on the campus and I was like, oh my God, I love the community garden. And I got so much more excited about the community garden than
That's crazy.
the interview to be an academic advisor. So it was one of those moments of like, it's all right there, but you have to like, stick to like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to work for Denver Urban Gardens and stick to that plan.
So what happened in the interview?
It was fine. And I, you know, I was like, so what about that community garden? Like, is that part of my job here?
That's amazing. And I love that you can pick these little pieces out, like these little red flags or these little details that during the time we just don't consider, and we don't look at them because we're so tunnel visioned on the path that we think that we're on. What a great story.
Absolutely.
And so how did you finally make it happen to where you were, where you are, where you wanted to be?
So, at Metro, I was on year-to-year contracts towards the end of my career, which I think is great and probably very intentional that I was trying to move in this different direction. So I had, so my contracts were ending, my classes ended for teaching, my contract ended for my full-time position, and I could have renewed. I absolutely could have renewed my administrator position, and I probably could have kept teaching sustainability classes or water conservation classes. And so it was just this moment of, I can renew again and push this off another year, or I can volunteer full time. I can quit and I can volunteer full time and cross my fingers that some way, somehow, a position will open up, or I will write myself a grant to get into the organization. Something will happen.
Wow. So you were really certain.
Leap of faith. Yeah. Really certain. Like, I got to quit talking about this and do it. Wow. Now yeah. So full-time volunteer. And I should say too that, that I have a partner that was able to subsidize, that money. Not everybody can just go quit your job and volunteer to do what you love. I have a partner that was able to subsidize, my income. And yeah, just a community that's very supportive of,
that's still hard. It's still pretty hard as a mom to make that decision to quit your job and volunteer full time. Yeah. So then what happened when you found the place to volunteer at?
Yep.
And then where?
Absolutely. So Heather DeLong, who runs DeLaney Community Farm, which is a program of Denver Urban Gardens, has been a colleague of mine for years and years and years. And her and I have always connected and somehow we're trying to figure out ways to work together in the past. So her and I have been in communication for years, and I pretty much just told her that I was going to, volunteer full time. And if a position opened up, then that would be awesome. Or that I could write a grant, write myself into a grant somehow. Or, her interpretation is that she, was so excited to have me on as a volunteer, and that we were out at the farm, and that I pretty much declared that I was going to work there. And I do not remember being that bold about it, but yeah, so I guess I just was like, I'm gonna work here. So I think that is a good lesson, because I think part of the puzzle is letting people know what you are looking for and what you want to do. Really declaring, hey, everybody, I really want to, be a full-time jewelry maker. Hey, everybody, I want to do this. And so if you hear of any opportunities, please think of me first. I think we do have to ask for what we want, and we do have to make these declarations to the whole world that, this is what I need right now, or this is what I'm going gluten-free. Whatever it is, just putting it out there, that's what you want.
I think it's easy when you have focus, when you're absolutely focused on something. But what about if you're so uncertain as to what the next step is, or what it is that you want?
Exactly. Well, I think what was really helpful for me is you had those group coaching sessions that were the idea being you're not totally sure maybe exactly what you want to do. You have some ideas of maybe the fields you want to go into, or a hobby you want to focus on, but you don't know how to make those first steps. And then we all came together as a group, and and it was awesome, because as you remember, sitting right next to me was this young woman who was in an environmental nonprofit who wanted to get into higher ed. I'm like, I want to get out of higher ed and into an environmental nonprofit. So we were like, let's help each other out here.
That's great.
Yeah. So I think, groups, starting coaching, life coaching, is the best way to start, because if you can't articulate, like you're saying, exactly what you want to do, not that any of us know exactly what we want to do, but it helps, coaching helps articulate what your goal
is. And just to get out of your head, I think, to be able to actually to hear yourself saying things out loud about what it is you want and what you don't want.
Yes.
So then describe the dream job that you have now.
Yeah, so I'm the assistant director at DeLaney Community Farm, which is a little 3-acre farm in Aurora, around like First and Chambers area. So it serves a very diverse community of folks. And we grow on the farm, it's a vegetable farm, and we grow food for community partners. So the WIC program, a refugee resettlement program, and Project Angel Heart that delivers to folks with life-threatening illnesses that are homebound. So half of our shares go to community partners, the other half go to public shares. So what's great is we really do serve people from all walks of life and tend to bring those folks together through classes, workshops, potlucks, events, volunteer days. So it's a little farm, but we do a lot.
That's so great. And you love it.
And
You're doing exactly what you're meant to do.
I love it. I love it. One of the ways I can tell I love it is because when I've done a couple presentations to university students, to WIC educators, and I never feel nervous. I feel like really at ease and really at peace when I'm talking about the farm and the programs and the work at the farm. And so that's never happened to me before. I get really nervous doing presentations. And it always feels a little clunky, and this feels very, very like just a perfect fit. Like my background, none of my career or my degrees have been wasted because at the farm, we really are doing resource development, getting people resources. We are doing education. We have classes, we're doing adult education, and we're doing environmental and sustainability education just by talking about growing vegetables, food production, the whole food system. So kind of everything I've done in the past actually has served me really well in my position now.
That's so great. And what a great way to measure how much you really fit somewhere is by the non-nervousness you feel when you're talking about it. That's a great measurement. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to people? We already talked about people who are stuck, and being stuck is just not real. But what advice would you give to people who want to get to that other side and want to get, to pull the trigger on, I'm just going to quit my job and volunteer somewhere?
Right. Well, a couple different things. And the first one might not make perfect sense, but read comedian memoirs. So like Tina Fey's book, Amy Poehler's book, Mindy Kalig's, because you got to keep a sense of humor about the whole thing. And really those women are talking about careers. Those books, they're about their memoirs, but they are talking about making hard choices and doing the boring work that pays off to do the fun work, and having kids and the whole juggle, but doing it, like owning it. They all own it, and they all have a great sense of humor about it. And then
that's great advice, Erika.
Own it, but laugh at yourself too.
I love it.
And then definitely life coaching, whether that's group coaching, one-on-one coaching, and also, making sure that you have friends that know what you're doing and what your interests are, and are supportive and excited for you around this stuff. So those are just a few.
That's so great. I love that. I love the read the memoirs of Tina. I love that. It's so specific and so awesome.
So specific. Yes.
That's great. So what's next for you, do you think?
Well, I love, being at Denver Urban Gardens, and Denver Urban Gardens is definitely growing. And the farm, we're actually, bigger is not better at a farm, but we are, trying to make the farm more efficient, grow more, have better classes. So I think I'm in the right place at the right time. And this field is only getting more and, bigger and bigger when we, who knows what's going to happen to our food supply in the future, looking at the California drought and whatnot, climate change, all those big things. So feeling really good about the field I'm in right now, and that who knows? who knows what will happen from here.
That's great. And so one more thing that I forgot to mention, you had advice to young women, find a mentor.
Absolutely. So I think all young women should spend time with, I hate to use the term middle-aged women, but women who are older than them. I've always had really fabulous older female mentors. And we forget sometimes to not read a book, not go to a Google search, not go to a website, but actually just talk to the older women in your life and bounce ideas off of them, because they're on the other end of that and can give you really sage advice and teach you patience. Be patient. It will all come together.
Did you have that?
Yes. I've actually have quite a lot of older women in my life who
that's great.
I can email, call, talk, go to coffee with, and just kind of say, like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Does that sound crazy? Do you remember making those big decisions? And getting really good advice from them.
And how are you helping the next generation?
I think right now I am trying to be a really good role model. So really practicing, positivity, healthy boundaries, healthy work-life boundaries, trying to be always the positive, constructive person in the room.
Great.
So yeah, role modeling is
great.
Hopefully what I'm doing.
And how do you pair up this mentor and mentorship? Like, how do you find young women to mentor, or the other way around?
Well, as cheesy as it sounds, or awkward as it sounds, I think if you are clicking with a woman who's a bit older than you, who you think is really interesting and successful, I think just saying, hey, I approaching them, I feel like we really click, and I find you to be a really good role model, and I was hoping we could go out to coffee, and I could run some of my ideas by you and just get your opinion if you have time for that. And I've never been turned down from that. I've never had anyone be like, well, that's weird, we're not going to do that.
Stalker.
What? No, it's always been like very well received. And I think that that's a huge compliment for somebody. If you're like, wow, I think you're really smart and have really good sensibilities. Can we talk?
That's great. I just don't think it happens very often.
No, it could, because I think we're living in a weird online culture right now where people, sometimes won't even talk to each other. It's really odd. So yeah, I think it just feels weird to say, can we talk? But I think everybody really wants to talk.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great advice. And I hope it happens more. And I hope people look you up and ask you to be their mentor, because you would make a fun. You would make a great one. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for the advice, and good luck to you.
You too. Thank
you. Thanks.